Hello everybody and welcome to today's class. For those of you who missed last week or didn't notice, my name is Don Van Antwerpen, but you can also call me Kuma Sensei because it's my nickname. Today we're going to be going over the dialogue cash, credit, or something else. So we're going to be talking about payment methods, how you buy and sell and pay for things. So before we talk about the answers, let's talk a little bit about the before you listen question that started out our assignment. Now you were asked in this, which payment method do you prefer when traveling abroad? Now there were four answers: cash, credit, debit, or mobile payment. Now out of those answers, 47 of you, the most of you, chose cash. Letter A. 26 of you chose B, credit cards. 20 chose C, which is debit cards, and 17 chose mobile payment, which is option D. Now we'll talk more about this at the end, but I want you to consider something interesting. If we were to ask this same question to a class of American students, almost everyone would have chosen option B. Whereas in this class, most people chose option A, cash. Why do you think that is? As we go over today's lesson, take a little time and think about that. So let's get started. Let's start by talking about Section 1. In Section 1, you were given 3 phrases to listen to. And in those phrases, you were meant to guess what the speaker was implying and what they said. So you're supposed to find the answer that is most similar in meaning to what you heard said. Not the same, but close. So let's take a look at our answers. Question 1. The audio you heard said, "I'm gathering useful travel trips from my friends." The correct answer was A. I'm asking my friends how to travel wisely. For number 2, your audio said, "Should I exchange cash or bring credit cards?" The correct answer to this was B, which is better, to bring cash or credit cards. Number 3, the audio was, "Some stores don't even accept credit cards." The answer, of course, was C. You cannot always use credit cards in stores. Now this one was a pretty easy series of questions. 1, 2, and 3, just trying to match. It's so easy. All you had to look for was similar words, similar ideas. I'm pretty sure you guys all, or most of you anyway, got this one right. So let's move on to the next section, shall we? Let's talk about Section 2. Now for Section 2, you had to listen to the whole conversation and fill in the 3 blank spots in the dialogue you were given. Those 3 blank spots were comments by Mari and Eric in their conversation about money, payment systems, and such that you use when traveling abroad. So let's take a little time and go over each of these answers. For number 1, Mari says, and this is your correct answer, A. I'm gathering useful travel tips from my friends. Now this is an easy one to guess based on what Eric says just after that. He says, okay, so I think I am the perfect person for this. You can ask me anything you like. So Mari's correct answer here. A, she's gathering useful travel tips. She's looking for something. And Eric's response is, I will give you whatever you like. So that makes a very easy context connection there. Number 2, the correct answer here is B. In this one, Mari asks, should I exchange cash or bring credit cards? Now this one is easy too, because just before she asks her question, she actually says, my first question is about money. So you know already that it has to be either B or C, since those are the only 2 options in our list that deal with money. And since you know that she's asking a question, because she said question, and the line ends with question mark, you know that it has to be B, because C is not a question. So these context clues can really help you figure out the right answer. Let's talk about number 3. For our last one, the correct answer is C. For this one, Eric says, some stores don't even accept credit cards. Now, of the 3 answers, this is the only one that's not a question. Now, since Mari is asking questions, and this line is something that Eric says as a response, and it looks like the response to a question, it just makes sense that this is going to be the correct answer for Eric's one line here. So those are the correct answers there, and those context clues I hope made it easier for you to figure out what was going on. Now we're going to take a minute or 2 here, and I'm going to show on screen the script for the second half of the dialogue. Now I want to remind you that this is just for you to follow along with, and it's not to be shared with other people, not to be given to your friends. This isn't for you to copy. This is just for you to look at, to check out, and see how well you understood the dialogue. So go ahead and take a look. I'll put it up on screen, and you can see how well you might have been able to understand. Take a look. Let's talk about section 3. Now in section 3, you're trying to show us how well you understood what you just listened to. So these following questions are about how well you understood the conversation. So you're choosing the best answer from a series of multiple choice questions. So let's start looking at our questions and answers, shall we? Number 1, question is, what does Eric recommend Mari to use? All right, so this is a good one. What did you think? The correct answer is D, credit cards. And you can tell this because Eric actually gives the answer in the first half of what he's saying. He says, well, I recommend mobile payment instead of using cash or credit cards. So you're able to see, I think, pretty easily that his idea is to use credit cards. So of your 4 answers, D is the correct choice. But it's worth thinking, why mobile payment? I wonder if we'll talk about that later. Let's talk about number 2. The question is, which of these reasons is not a reason that Mary wants to use her credit card? Now, the correct answer is A. She needs to exchange cash. Now, based on your answers, I can see that this one was a little confusing for some people. So let's look at what she says. In the first half, she mentions several reasons why she wants to use her credit card. She says, wow, what advanced technology, but I prefer to use my credit card since I'm used to it. Also, I can earn points with my purchases on the rewards program. I don't want to miss this chance of earning a lot of points. So let's go over the things she said. She said, I'm used to it. She talked about earning points shopping. She talked about not wanting to miss earning points and using her rewards program. Did she say anything else? No, she did not. She said nothing else, which means she did not say anything about exchanging cash. So that means that she needs to exchange cash, option A, is the one thing she did not say. Let's look at number 3. According to Eric, how much of the sales transactions in China are being made by smartphones? The correct answer is C, more than 50%. Now, Eric mentions this in the second half. And it's worth knowing that more than half of, which is what he says, means more than 50%, because 50%, half, they're the same thing. What Eric says is the Chinese government has been promoting a cashless system for years. Now, more than half of all sales transactions in China are being made by smartphones. More than half. That means more than 50%, which is our correct answer. Letter C. Let's talk about number 4. What is the difference between debit and credit cards? The correct answer is C. You pay for your purchase right away with debit cards. Now, for those of you who might be confused, the phrase right away means immediately, at that exact moment. So when you use a debit card, the money comes right out of your bank account. You lose that money and at the moment you pay. With a credit card, the credit card company keeps track of that and they hold it as a debt. And then you pay them later. So the money doesn't come right away from you, it comes later. That's an important difference to know. Let's look at number 5. The question is, what does Mari mean by pay off the balance? The answer here is, of course, B, taking care of her debt. Now, looking at the answers, I can see that there are a good number of you in class who got this one wrong. Many of you thought it meant learning about balancing expenses instead, and that is not correct. So let's talk about what taking care of debt means. To take care of something in English means to make it right. In the case of debt, money you owe to someone, to make it right means to pay it, to reduce that debt to zero. So in this case, to take care of her debt is to pay off her balance, to pay, to give the money to make it go away. So that is definitely the correct answer. It's also worth noting that with credit cards, if you do not pay off your balance, if you do not take care of your debt, you have to deal with interest. We talked about this last week, and interest causes your debt to go up the longer you wait to pay it off. So pay that off in a hurry. So that gets us to the end of today's lesson, but before we finish, we've gone over all the answers, but I want to come back to that question I asked you earlier. If American students answered our starting question of which payment method do you prefer, almost all would say credit card, whereas many of you said cash. Why do you think that is? Let's talk about how credit cards, debit cards, and debt and loans work in America. Now, in Japan and in most of the world, credit cards are a very short-term loan. In most cases, you use your credit card to pay for something, and it means you have to pay the credit card company a little later, usually not more than a month. It is unusual for people to leave a balance on their credit card for more than 1 month. It happens, but it is very rare. In the United States, however, most credit cards are treated like long-term loans. That means that people use them and then spend many months slowly paying off the balance. They're used differently. Because of this, most Americans have a credit card, and it is their preferred means of paying. Now, in America, credit card companies are all about making a profit. And in particular, they want to make their money from people using their cards that don't have a lot of money themselves. The way they do this is they make credit cards available not to people they think can pay, but to people they think can't pay. So they give you the ability, if you are poor, to make large purchases and pay for them over time. And that, if you remember, is where interest comes in. That interest rate gets added onto the credit cards, and unlike loans, which are harder to get, have to come from a bank, and have lower interest rates of 2 to 5 to 6 to 10%, a credit card will have an interest rate of 17, 18, 19, 20, 30, 40%, sometimes that high. Very high interest rates on a credit card. So what happens is that people will use them to make a large purchase and then pay for it slowly over time. And in the end, they will pay the credit card company much, much, much more than they ever would have if they had taken out a loan or just bought it with cash themselves. So you may be thinking, well, why don't people just not use credit cards? This sounds like a system that would make nobody use credit cards, right? Well, there's a piece you may not understand. In the United States, we have what is called a credit score. Now, a credit score is a number, a score, a grade that you are given by one of three private companies. And these companies keep track of all of the credit cards, loans, and other debt that you might have. This score is used by everyone in America. Your credit score determines whether you can get a bank account, buy a car, get a phone contract, even whether you can get an apartment or a house. Now here's where it gets interesting. This credit score is based on many different things, but it's mostly based on how much you use credit cards, loans, and other debt. So if you have no debt at all in America, no credit cards, no loans, you will have a bad score, and you won't be able to get a car or a phone or an apartment. You have to have some debt and be paying it off. If you have a lot of debt, credit cards and loans, you will also have a bad score because you have all of these things, but you're not paying them off. The only way for this score to be good is for you to have credit cards, take out loans, get debt, but pay it off regularly and over time. The tough part of living in America is that we are required to take debt, whether we want to or not, to live in that society. So this might be a good conversation practice with you and your friends this week. Get together and discuss some of the differences between how Americans and Japanese and the rest of the world use debt like credit cards and loans and things like that. Which of these systems is better? Which do you like more? What are the advantages and disadvantages? Is it good? Is it bad? Do you like it? Have a good conversation and talk about it. If you have any questions about it, please feel free to ask me, to reach out, and to have a good conversation. You can always get a hold of me through the teachers. I am happy to talk to you. In the meantime, I hope you had a good lesson. Have good conversations this week, and we'll see you in class next week for our next lesson. Bye!